Hi, it's Mark here. I believe we are broadcasting again. I've got Gil Guillory on the line, and he's going to talk to us about subscription patrol and restitution. Let me just take a few minutes. There were a couple of chat questions in the past. Let me just try and give an answer for them while we're in between sessions now. Somebody asked about the best business structure for being an ANCAP entrepreneur. Rather than give the answer, I would rather have the forum to ask the question. I've always enjoyed working as a consultant. It lets me organize my affairs myself. I've worked that way in 3 different continents, and it gives you a lot more power to decide what jurisdictions you're in and how you get taxed and how your expenses are treated. It also helps constantly remind customers that the relationship is a two-way relationship, that they're not just the employer and you the employee. A few times, usually as I've moved countries, people have, I've gone into employment for the stability of getting started in a new country. And as soon as I visit the Human Resources Department, my heart sort of crumples, and I realize that I've been thinking, I'm just selling you my time in a large block, and you pay me, and we trade on an equal basis. And as soon as I visit the HR department, suddenly I find that I am peon number 6,752, and if I want to apply for Christmas leave in 2 years, then I've already missed the deadline for it. But I don't think that this is a hard and fast rule. It's one of strategy. Eventually what I'd like to see is different law contracts offered by different firms for different ways people can associate with each other, and that we choose whichever one suits us best for the type of venture we go into. But I think I will hold off there. I've already eaten up 2 minutes of Gil's time, and I know, Gil, I first met you just as I was getting ready to go to my first Austrian Scholars Conference. I was really excited because I'd seen you talking about this restitution and subscription patrol and restitution service. The nice thing about it, the exciting thing about it, was it's a way to provide security in the market without waiting for that one day when suddenly there's no state, no government. We have security needs that aren't being addressed by the state. And there are even ways that we can provide that and deal with it without the state considering us direct competitors. I know some of your early research was in the legality of providing these sorts of services.
Yes, indeed.
And it's research you've done over several years. It's always developing. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you, and I'll let you tell us about the research. And I will get my picture out of the way and watch your presentation.
All right. Thank you very much. Right, so my name's Gil Guillory, and now I'm switching over to my presentation here, working with a couple of screens. I'll try to keep track of what's going on in the chat window if you guys have any questions. I'm interested to do this presentation in a way that I tell you what, I've got a little screen right here that I'm going to shut off. Let's see. If I do that, am I okay?
I see the right hefty
there we go.
In white, and I don't see anything coming up yet on the feed. Let me just check the Justin TV feed and make sure I see it there.
Okay.
My screen says that I'm broadcasting, but it also says that our video connection is very slow.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, let me just start going, and you guys in the chat window, just let me know if this is working out for you. Let me just start with saying the outline for this presentation is pretty simple. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I want to describe the business opportunity of subscription patrol and restitution. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of what happened, what I call accidental open source entrepreneurship, and kind of how I started publishing about it. And then I'm going to spend a good deal of my time talking about what I've learned about so far on this business model. I'm going to talk about the current projects I'm working on, and then what I kind of see is the list of things I have to do before I run off and do this. So first, I just want to say that my name is Gil Guillory. I have a bachelor's and a master's in chemical engineering, and the way I bring the money in is to work as a chemical engineer in the engineering and construction field. Been in the field since 1994, working for various companies such as KBR and Halliburton. Worked for S&C Lavalin, and worked for Aker, and I now work for a small company. And this is, of course, one of the real questions is, as you're an entrepreneur, when will we have 78% liberty, says Kinsella. Anyway, I was attracted to the Libertarian Party, and I ran for office twice as a congressional candidate, became an anarchist in '99, and then around 2002 is when I made the decision to start studying this business plan and really got serious about preparing to launch the company. I mean, this seems like a long time to study and launch, but as I've been okay, I'm not quite getting you, Mark. Are you saying that there's a problem with reception?
I think it's just with mine, because I got messages from other people that they're receiving things on the loopback, or they're receiving things on the broadcast. So I think things are going out okay from my side, but I'm also bringing it back in from the Agora.io website, and it was a little slow on the uptake there. But it looks
I'll proceed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the subscription patrol and restitution business model is simple. It's a residential service with a price point, maybe 35% or $35 or $50 a month. It will constitute patrol of the house and the environs, the area around the house, a monthly newsletter on area crime, and then being a first responder with guaranteed response time to the premises. And when we arrive on a call, if a property or personal crime has occurred, then we investigate, we find and confront the suspect, engage them in mediation or binding arbitration to secure restitution for the subscriber, or failing that, we pay kind of an insurance claim to the subscriber to make them whole, even if we can't find the person or if mediation or arbitration fails for some reason. And then, of course, we do various concierge services like vacation checks and escorting and other sorts of things. And I've laid this out in excruciating detail in some of the papers I've written on the subject. By the way, I think I'm going to show you the viewers real quick.
Sure.
Let's see here. I guess I can't. I'm going to... Can you see? No? Okay. I'm trying my best to deal with my... There we go. Okay, so this is my web browser. If you go to this website, and in fact I'll paste this into the thing for everybody to see. This is where I keep track of and publish almost all of my research on the business model. So now let me share again over on the other side here. Excuse me just a minute while I select that. Now that feed should be coming across again. Okay. So what happened was, as I was studying this and deciding to launch this entrepreneurial effort, I was posting in forums on antistate.com, and I think I mentioned in one of my articles on striketheroot.com in 2002 that I was working on this concept. And as I continued to work on it, just kind of part-time, to tell you the truth, I was going kind of slowly. But Ed Stringham gave me a call. He's a professor of economics and anarchist, and his research area is anarchism. And he had become, I think, maybe not president of API, but he was in charge of the conference that year. And he suggested I present a paper at API, and so I put together my first paper on this. And I really discovered that by writing up everything that I knew, I would learn a lot of stuff. I just learned a lot when I did that. And I had just read A Good Hard Kick in the Ass by Rob Adams. Rob Adams is a venture capital entrepreneur in Austin, and he was the entrepreneur in residence at UT Austin at the time, and I had been turned on to this book. It's a really good book. One of the things he makes quite clear is that when somebody comes into his firm to pitch an idea, if the entrepreneur lays on his desk a non-disclosure agreement, he immediately kicks it out and says he's not interested in it at all, because laying down an NDA means that you think that the idea is what really makes the firm, and the reality is it's the execution team that really makes it. And so there's not really a comparative advantage in hiding all of your plans and hiding all of your the things you find out. I mean, to some extent that's true if you're dealing in a competitive situation where you might have information that's useful. But especially for me in this case, I'm trying to gather to me people who are interested in this business model and interested in advancing it as an industry, and so this is exactly what I follow. And what I found interesting is ever since then, this is the model I've been following. I pick a project that I need to advance my understanding on. Because I do presentations and because I have this website that's open, people contact me from time to time. I find partners, and I kind of pull them together and make up a little project, and we execute it, we document it, and then we present it. And I've presented it at the Southern Economic Association. I've presented papers at the API, I don't even know what API stands for, the I'll look it up. It's appy.org. It's a free market organization of mainly economists that present papers to one another. And I also, of course, done most of my presentations at the Mises Institute. I found that the concentration of anarchists at the Mises Institute is especially helpful because I run into people that have expertise that are also anarchists, and it's a fruitful place for me to find new partners. So I'm going to go through a little bit what I've learned on my work so far, and am I presenting? Let's see. Are the slides showing?
I was seeing
they have not been showing. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So now I feel horrible because I've just been talking. I actually have these slides, and I will upload these slides after the fact. This is just what I was talking about my accidental open source entrepreneurship. And what I've learned so far kind of fits into these categories. There's a lot of minutia here, and I guess I want to ask the folks that are following, tell me if this is okay. If you really want to learn something specific that I've mentioned, I'll go into it in more depth. If I'm going along fine. Please ask questions as I go along. The first question I had is it a viable business idea? And that's the first paper that I looked at. And if you guys look on my website, it's all in reverse date order. So at the bottom, you'll see this paper called On the Viability of Subscription, Patrol, and Restitution Services, which I presented at the Association of Private Enterprise Education. That's APE. And the guy that I co-authored that with is Brian Drake, who's now who's an anarchist that I met through the Libertarian Party, and who is now he is now a sheriff's deputy, I believe. He got his undergraduate degree in psychology, and he went into the security field. He and I, in writing this paper, part of what we did there was we came up with some preliminary marketing research pilot questions to ask, and we went around and we asked a bunch of people questions. And of course, as I wrote it, I ended up with 1,000 questions. There were questions on the actuarial side about how do we deal with the insurance part. There were questions about legalities. There were questions about how does the patrol work. There were questions on, if this is such a great idea, how come home monitoring companies aren't doing it? How come patrol and guard companies aren't doing it? A definition of criminology is asked for by N.S. Kinsella. I don't think that's necessary at this time, but I will define criminology. It's the study of crime, and of course the next question is, what's the definition of crime? And we all know this is a troublesome definition. So I will leave that until later, because I am working on a book where I'm going to have a whole chapter on criminology. Okay, so when I wrote this initial paper, it really set the stage for an entire research program of filling out all of these questions, and I've been working it down the line. So I next did a paper on the legal landscape of the business plan, and what I was able to do was I met someone affiliated with the Mises Institute, Carrie Ann Citron, and she and I worked together to write this paper on the legal landscape for subscription, patrol, and restitution. She was a law student at the time, and now she's a scholar at the Goldwater Institute in Arizona. The next thing I did was did a whole project on the actuarial analysis of crime, and again at the Mises Institute during intersessions I ran into Mike Blakeney, who is an actuary, and Wilton Alston, who has written for LouRockwell.com. I also worked with him on conditioning some of the data, and we did an entire paper on an actuarial analysis of the crime, and it's complicated. I'm not going to go deeply into it, but we took uniform crime report data on the incidence of crimes in the U.S., and we modeled it over time. We looked at geographic variations. We looked at the NCVS data, the National Crime Victimization Survey data, which is crimes that the UCR data is crimes that are known to law enforcement, state law enforcement. The NCVS data are collected in a completely different way. The I think it's the Department of Justice that actually does this. They have an annual survey where they call people and they say, "Were you victimized?" And they ask them a whole set of questions about it. And so it's a much clearer picture about total victimization and can account for underreporting. So we built up an entire actuarial model. And over the course of that, you'll see the next point is the behavior of subscriptions. We kind of asked the question, well, it's useful and important to know how the behavior of subscribers is over time. That is, when you first launch a subscription-based business, you will obviously be you'll start with 0 subscribers, and then as you get more and more subscribers, then it follows some sort of uptake curve, so to speak, on up to a final saturation point, which would be the total percentage of households that subscribe. And as it turns out, there's an extensive literature on this I found, and we used to model how many subscribers there are. And there's this whole section of a paper that I worked on that uses the BAS model, is what it's called. And you can, of course, find this. It's a subsection of the paper on my site under the insurance paper. The other thing I did was I did a patrol staffing paper. This was a particular, I had been looking for companies in Houston that I could possibly purchase, and so there's a state registry of companies that are regulated as patrol companies, and I did a cold mailer to a whole bunch of them with some of the papers I had written, trying to see if they would be interested in co-venturing or this sort of thing. I'm just looking and I see the feed. Oh, I see what happened. What happened was I moved something in front of the slides for a moment and it canceled it out. Okay, I'll be sure not to cover up my slides again. The slides will come back, or they will have come back by the time you hear this. When I was when I contacted various companies, I followed up with phone calls, and I ended up finding a guy who owns a patrol company here in Houston, and we worked on talking about the project over a number of months, and I got him interested in doing a patrol study and field trials. Long story short, we did the paper study, but we didn't get to the field trials, and his business got very, very busy, and he had to drop out, which is great for him. His business is going great. And so I have some more work to do on patrol. I've done a lot of marketing research. There's secondary and primary marketing research. Secondary marketing research is you contact a company like Hoover's or Dun & Bradstreet or BizFinder. There are a ton of these things, Ibis World, where you can buy. Usually for something like $500 to $1,000, you can buy a report that tells you everything you want to know about, say, the home monitoring business in the U.S. And it will lay out all sorts of things. What's the concentration of businesses? What's the market share of various businesses look like? What are the typical business models? What do their income and balance sheets usually look like? What are the drivers in the market? What are the forecasts for the demands in the market, and so forth? This is what we call secondary marketing research. So you buy a report and you read it and you analyze it carefully. And I've done that for the home monitoring market and for the patrol guard market. I have a separate marketing research paper that I've written where I detail out the things that I've learned and at least come to take views on for those two major business models. And those are the two main business models that serve security in the U.S. right now. This is not taking into account, of course, things like purchasing locks and purchasing guns and owning a dog and this sort of thing. I mean, where they're going concerns that that sell security services. And then we've done some primary research. I've done 3 types of primary marketing research, and again, these are in the marketing paper on my website. The first type that I've done is to come up with a list of questions and go door to door and look for houses that have a home monitoring sign in the yard. That's what we decided. If they have a home monitoring sign in the yard, then they may be a subscriber of a home monitoring company, and therefore they have some interest in the security market, and we use that as a first pass filter for picking people to ask questions of. So we just went door to door and knocked on 100 or so doors and talked to people about home monitoring and patrol and this business model and what they thought was interesting or useful about it. And I reported that in my very first paper. Then I did further primary marketing research. I had read some more books on marketing research, and all of these marketing research books, by the way, are referenced in the papers I wrote. But any other entrepreneur, if they want some advice on what I found out about marketing research, or books to read on entrepreneurship, or anything, I'm quite willing to share that. The next step of primary marketing research we did was open-ended questionnaires that I sent to colleagues that I work with. I sent it to about 10 or 20 people. And I said, hey, I just, you can go to Google and make up a Google form. I made up a Google form of a whole bunch of open-ended questions like, what's crime like in your area? How do you handle your, these are what we call general pain points. You want to ask people what are their security concerns and what are they trying to solve, and then you sculpt your business model to meet those concerns. And then what I did was I did some primary marketing research in a mall. I purchased you can go to a mall and purchase a booth for a day or two, and it doesn't cost much. I think it cost, $500 or $1,000 to have a booth in the mall. And then I gave away $2 bills to people who would answer questions about the marketing research questionnaires that I had. And that primary research got me a lot more information, and I report on that in the second marketing research paper I have, the one that's closest to the top on my website. And then I've also done some market planning work. There's this book called Crossing the Chasm about how to structure your marketing so that you identify the segments that are interested in security, in this case in security, and how you kind of structure different value propositions for different segments, and which ones you go after first and which ones you go after later. So I've tried my best to try to answer these questions for this business model. The last 3 bullet points here I'll talk about briefly. One is on search, seizure, and arrest. From the very beginning, I've had these questions, and you can read in the academic literature, even Market for Liberty, like by the Tannehills, or in Anarchy, State, and Utopia by Robert Nozick. It's almost assumed that private security companies will have search, seizure, or arrest powers somewhat akin to state police. Now, from my legal landscape paper, I knew that, well, that's not the case right now. The private security companies don't have that at all. But I also want to kind of know, well, do I want to go after those powers? Do I want to be able to have them? And it really got me thinking, and I've reflected on it in a number of the papers I've written. But I finally decided to do a full-on study on this, and so I've written on the ethics of this. I've looked into the criminological literature on search and seizure, and I studied the history of search and seizure, and we're starting to do some primary scholarship on searches and their efficacy in true malum in se offenses. And our conclusions so far are that the search-seizure functions really grew along with the modern state. They really started around 1300, talking from the Anglo-American perspective, and from 1300 to, say, 1700 is where all of these innovations really took place, and they were to enforce all of the malum prohibitum laws that the monarch was projecting his power out to on the territorial monopoly he was establishing. And as a result, it's kind of a rethink about, you know, what really do we want private security to look like? And I argue that in Ancapistan, or whatever we want to call it, there would not really be a search or a seizure power by private security companies. And so I've tried to come to grips with what this implies, and I'm continuing to study that. The second to last point on this slide is about general damages. You know, nowadays, if you are caught as a thief, the cops take you before a criminal judge, and once they decide that you've committed the crime, they sentence you to a punishment. As we know, we're interested in setting general damages to victims, not punishments necessarily. And I think that I've maybe made a small contribution here in talking about mediation casebooks and how they can be used as a window on the norms of society for restitution that can be used by arbiters in establishing imposed settlements. And I talk about this in a whole paper I have called A Call for Mediation Casebooks, which I co-authored with Greg Rome, which is another scholar I met at the Mises Institute. He's a lawyer in private practice in Chalmette, Louisiana, near New Orleans, and he and I talked about this, and he helped me out with it, and we wrote the paper. It's been very fruitful, and of course, right now we're extending that work. Very recently, you know, if you read these books by folks, you know, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? They say begin with the end in mind, and there's a little bit of a tension here. As Peter Klein was just saying in the last segment, we can't really predict what a totally free market in dispute resolution and security provision will look like. But the academic that studies these things has less of a burden than the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur really has to think about and sculpt a solution and think hard about it and come up with something. And it's going to be wrong in various ways, but the idea is to make it as right as possible. So I've actually undertaken a project to write up an entire description. It's along the lines of Market for Liberty, but with more specificity about all the different companies that are necessary in a free market of dispute resolution and security provision. That's one of my projects right now, and that's the last one on this current projects slide. My current projects are I've been doing some IT planning, and between myself and a lady who's this is another thing, is drawing in people who know something. Because I've been publishing and because I'm known, I was contacted by a lady who has 10 plus years of experience as a crime analyst and knows all about record management services and record management systems, and computer-aided dispatch systems, things that private security and public police forces use in the provision of patrol. And she has been instrumental in putting together an IT plan that is kind of still in the works, although very close to completion, at least to it. Most of these things I do to an 80%, right? It's an 80-20 rule. You get about 80% there and you say, yeah, that's good. Let's get it out there, show some people what we're doing, and then we can ruminate about it, polish the apple later. I'm working on a mediation casebooks project with 5 or more people right now, some lawyers. I've got some mediation agencies involved, an academic and restorative justice, and we're moving that ahead, and that's a pretty exciting one. And to tell the truth, this may become a little spin-off business by itself, and that may be my first business. But it's kind of what you might call a factor market. It's a market that has to be established, that the business I'm really interested in, subscription patrol and restitution, has to rely upon, and that's victim offender mediations. So developing that market is important here. Patrol and criminology, now that's a little project I'm doing to improve my understanding of patrol. I made the acquaintance about a year ago of a respected man who is he's a well-known figure in problem-oriented policing and problem-based learning, and conducts seminars for patrol, both public and private. And he is helping me wade through criminological literature and get myself up to speed where, this isn't really my field. Well, it is now, I guess, but it's not what I studied in college. But he has a great background. He's both a policeman, and then he became a PhD sociologist, and now he's a consultant. Another project that I mentioned briefly is I've got a project on murder and search, and murder and search is we're looking to validate some of these ideas we've had about how important search really is to malum in se crimes. So I've got a lawyer and an academic criminologist on that one. Actuarial work, I'm extending the actuarial work with a mathematics post-grad fellow, and that's kind of exciting. And like I said, the book project, to kind of lay out what this end game really looks like, I'm going to try to write that this year and see how far I can get. So hopefully I have not droned on and just bored everybody to death, but people are always asking me, well, Gil, when are you going to start this project? When are you going to launch? And the problem is that this is fluid. First of all, I'm an employee, right? So I don't want to leave my employer in the lurch, and I have to adjust my plans as my employer's plans evolve. So it could be anywhere from 1 to 5 years if I have to leave my employment and do this. The main thing I need is people. And the execution team is key. And so far, I've had lots of success in drawing in people to do little projects, and really got a lot of traction to understand different elements of this business model, and to get critical feedback. All of this has been really helpful. But there are some serious principles that have to be on the team and ready to work before I can really say, let's launch this thing. First of all, we need income, so we need a sales principle. I have been contacted by a guy who sells home monitoring subscriptions. So it's a related industry, and he's a high performer, and he's interested in the business model. But we have to do a little bit more in the marketing study and a marketing plan, and we have to have somebody who's ready to do it, ready to move to Houston or lives in Houston. I need to do more patrol study, a little bit more paper study, some field trials, and I need my very first one or two patrol principals. People who will do the patrolling. The same thing with the investigation, although the investigation patrol principals may be the same people. As I mentioned, developing the victim offender mediation market and the victim offender arbitration market are huge. The victim offender mediation market is already established to some extent. There are a number of victim offender reconciliation programs and mediation programs, agencies that have been established, nonprofits. There are about 1,000 worldwide. Typically, these are diversion programs of some sort. They're made so that if a juvenile comes into sound. Got it. I'll try to speak. Well, you adjust your sound. Very good. The victim offender mediation agencies work as diversion programs, and they often mediate in a context which has state involvement. And so as we establish this company and start doing victim offender mediations on the side that are extra state, it will be a different type of mediation than is typical. The victim offender arbitration market doesn't exist really, and this also kind of plays into the question of what are the aspects of these principles. I think that there are certain key roles that I think ideological anarchism is a necessity, and our go-to guy or gal who is our first victim offender arbitration go-to people, they really would probably be best if they were anarchists, so that they really kind of got the idea of the long-term goals. So this is maybe Stephan Kinsella will come to the fore. I don't know. Of course, we have to draft operating manuals, and I have to complete business plan documents. Of course, I have pro formas, but I think they're not ready for prime time. Every time I learn something, I have to adjust them, and estimate cash flow to break even, and continue to save money. And so these are the things that I have to do to be ready. I tell you what, I think I'd like to open it up to questions now. If people are interested in talking about questions, or Mark, if you have some questions, maybe we could have a little chat here.
I've got some, while we're waiting for other people in the chat window to catch up. I've got some about how much of that industry exists now. I mean, if you're talking about mediator case books and programs for victim mediation, are there 10 arbitration and mediation organizations in the country? Are there 1,000?
I don't know in the country exactly. I will direct you. I'm putting this up online so people can see. You can go to VOMA.org, which is the Victim Offender Mediation Association. This is, all of this stuff exists at some level. And I'm sorry about that. And so I'm a member of VOMA, and but mainly it's a loose association of various agencies. Let me show you an example of an agency. Let's see. There's a VORP in. Oh yeah, here's one. Shalom Works. Okay, so Shalom Works. Okay, you can see here. This is a victim offender reconciliation program, and let's see if you can see that it's a nonprofit, and what they do is they put victims and offenders together to complete the reconciliation. So there's already a are you seeing this website?
I'm seeing the website on my Skype. It looks like the broadcast on my loopback is running about 2-3 minutes slow. So I think.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, they'll see this. Okay.
Or the rest of the viewers will pick it up in a couple minutes. So
okay.
They might
Very
start
good.
flooding us with questions. So
these things, so these things exist. Okay. The thing is that they don't necessarily all work together as an anti-state organization. The Shalom is outside of the state, but they work as a diversion program, and so there's an existing mediative context. When the victim and offender come together, the offender has already been sentenced to maybe some probation, and so then the mediation takes place, and they do restitution on top of that. So what I'm working on right now is the mediation casebook work is to really show all of these cases and what these cases usually look like, so that we can get a sense of how are these types of existing institutions that can be bent to new ends or moved into a direction that is anti-state. So, do we have any questions that have come up? Let's see. He asked how many non-governmental mediation businesses. Yeah, so they're not typically. The other thing I would point out: these are not typically businesses. These are nonprofits. Most mediation that takes place, if you go to the American Arbitration Association website and you order their books and so forth, I have these things. Let's see. I think I actually have it right here. Let me switch my video real quick. Let's see. I want to do stop sharing and then go to video somehow. Let's see. Video. Okay, so give me just a second here. Okay, right, so here is a real big book, right? This is by the American Arbitration Association, and it's their handbook on mediation.
You hit them over the head with that.
Okay, these institutions exist, and the thing about the American Arbitration Association is that they work in a largely legal context. When you do arbitration, you fall under certain state guidelines, and you have to do arbitration within certain legal boundaries. Mediation, as it's practiced by the American Arbitration Association members, is typically done by lawyers who, for instance, will mediate a marriage dispute, and then if the dispute is going south and they can't resolve through mediation, the mediator will switch roles and will do arbitration there on the spot. This is more and more common to do mediation arbitration in one full swoop. And there are critics of this approach because the mediator then, I won't go into all the critiques of this, but it's interesting. You know, the thing is a lot of these things are out there. As anarchists, what we really need to do is we need to reach out, understand what these institutions are, and how we can build on this knowledge base to evolve institutions in an anti-state direction. So it's a challenge for the entrepreneur. But I think subscription control and restitution is one of the most important things to establish, to achieve.
Like the idea if non-anarchists are stumbling towards these solutions rather than ideologues like us saying this is the way we think it should be and we're going to run out ahead of the market and construct it. I think it's almost more proof that we're right, that people that believe differently gravitate towards these as successful ways of dealing with each other, even without the benefit of the theory.
Right. There is one more thing. You're seeing my website here, right?
Yeah, I've got it up.
Okay. One more thing I wanted to point out that's on my website is this paper right here called The Role of Subscription-Based Patrol and Restitution in the Future of Liberty. What a mouthful that is, right? This was finally published in 2009 at Libertarian Papers, which is the successor publication to the Journal of Libertarian Studies. And I guess I will mention that it also won the Alfred Prize last year. So I at least have some reason to say that it's actually a pretty good paper, which I co-authored with Patrick Tinsley, who's an incredible libertarian scholar in his own right, and probably why the paper is so good. But this particular paper, what I attempted to do was, I've got this outline that I've shown on the screen now, you can see. I try to make the case why subscription patrol and restitution is so important and how it can really create a lot of institutions for us. Because when we do subscription patrol and restitution, what you do is you create a demand for, within criminal justice, for non-state patrol. You create a demand for, and therefore you create the demand for curricula under criminal justice that are skewed toward this business model. You know, whenever a business model emerges, university institutions try to adapt and create curricula to supply employees for those business models. You know, I'm a good example, right? I'm a chemical engineer. Well, chemical engineering didn't really exist as a degree in the university system until the 1920s. And it's not that chemical engineering as a profession didn't exist. You had mechanical engineers going in, and they were, you know, they would mix their knowledge of chemistry and their knowledge of mechanical engineering. And so this degree program emerged to meet this demand for a specialized type of mechanical engineer that also had a bunch of chemistry background. And by the same token, we would expect that by putting together a business like this, you create this derived demand for criminal justice students, which then creates a derived demand for the professors who can teach it. And then you also create this demand for the mediators. And the mediators have degrees, typically in psychology or social work. And then you create demand for the adjudicators, which would typically have a degree in law. And all of these people feeding into this non-state system would then start to attract people who are sympathetic to it, but also study it. So it really creates this whole structure of production that I think is essential for the type of institutions that are robust and are broad-based. So that's my commercial for that paper.
Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. You want to just give a plug for your website again?
So the website... Yeah, I put it on the chat, but let me put it up one more time. This is I don't have anything like gilguillory.org. It's just a Google page. I guess I should...
The Google search.
There you go. I just put it into the chat window. That's my that's my website right there. And this presentation that I just did, I'll put up on the website, and you're going to do a YouTube capture on this, right? So I can link to that as well.
That's right.
Isn't that right?
For those that are in the audience, I've seen the question go by also. These are getting pushed out to YouTube soon after they finish. I've got the first two presentations. I'm going to do a little bit of logging into YouTube and stitching the morning's presentation together as a playlist, and then I'll be sending that out for those that are time zone challenged.
All right, well, thanks for having me on, Mark. And I encourage anybody to contact me with questions or if they want to get involved with the work I'm doing.
Okay, I certainly enjoyed it, and it's exciting research, and I look forward to talking to you later on in the day as we do our roundtables.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.